afternoon, everybody. I'm going to talk about new business models through decentralized autonomous organizations and token-curated attesters. So this is a bit of tech, but don't worry. So what about Kilt first? So I come from a company producing something we call the Kilt protocol. That is basically a permissionless trust infrastructure for the internet. It builds credentials for the Web 3.0. So a credential is what you have in your wallet, like a passport or a driver's license, and we do this infrastructure to get this into the internet. We're also building a regulation-friendly virtual structures. And you might have heard the people from Parity this morning. We are building on Parity substrate. So also a little bit of advertising for those guys. They're doing a great job. Today I can't talk about all those topics, so I picked one, and we're talking about only the regulation-friendly virtual infrastructures. If you're interested in the rest, please visit our website, kilt.io. So when you look at what happened in the blockchain industry in the last 10 years and predict a little bit what's going to happen in the next 10 years, we see that first we got blockchains. That was the Bitcoin time. 5 years later, actually, we went to smart contracts. That was the Ethereum time. Right now, everybody's talking about tokenizing assets. Probably heard a lot of tokens about that, talks about that. Tokenized asset is basically when you tokenize your real estate or you tokenize your company. But the next logical step of that, if people get their company tokenized, it's only the shares in the company which is tokenized. The next question they will ask, okay, why can't I virtualize the whole company on the blockchain? And this is what we call token-curated attesters in the first place, which then will, 5 years later, lead to decentralized autonomous organization, and in the end, maybe in self-owned assets, which is basically a car which leases itself and then lends it out to drivers and gets money from them and pays back the leasing fees for that. We have seen a try of a shortcut between smart contracts to DAOs. You probably noticed that in 2016. That failed. And there's some reason why that failed. And we were thinking about why is that actually failing. And you cannot only talk about technology, what the blockchain people always like. You have to take into account regulatory issues as well. So what did blockchain actually give us? On the side of technology, it gave us machine-generated trust, right? On this side, on the regulatory side, what we got was regulation for utility tokens. Now, if I buy a Bitcoin, I know how much tax I have to pay if I sell it the next day in comparison to how much tax I have to pay when I sell it a year later, at least in Europe. Then came smart contracts. What came out of the smart contracts was actually from the technological side. We can now put software on the blockchain. That's cool. On the regulatory side, something interesting happened, but nobody expected. That was we got the ICOs, because they are now regulated. I can make an ICO in Greece and in Germany, and we have regulation for that. Even better regulation in some other countries. Now the next step is the tokenized asset, which is happening right now, and the banks are pushing that very much because they see new business models there. What will come out of that from a regulatory side is security tokens. So like you just said, you can build a security token now and tokenize your company. Actually, from the technological side, nothing really changed. Next step will be that we need something like a virtual person. Now we have the legal person, which is a limited company, and we have the natural person, which is you. But we don't have a company which runs only in the blockchain. And this is what we call a virtual person. What we need for that on the technological side is a sandbox company which runs on the blockchain. And from the regulatory side, we need new laws for virtual persons. And we're making very good progress here, actually. So we're talking with lots of jurisdictions, and we have the virtual person in strategies, in governments, in Europe already. So this is definitely happening. And then comes the future, not talking about that. So what can we do to get this step done from tokenized assets to the next step, which is the virtual person? there's two problems we have to talk about. First, it's the software and regulation problem. When you build a smart contract and give this, and say this is a company now, a virtual company in a smart contract, you give this to a regulator, they will never be able to read it because those are civil servants and they're doing regulation, they're not doing software, they're not computer scientists, and this will never change. So neither the investors nor the regulators can understand the details of your software, so this is definitely not going to happen. And as we have seen in the DAO case, small errors can have devastating consequences. A small error in the software kills your company. So what can regulators do? They can read configuration files. If you build a limited company now in your jurisdiction, you have to file a paper. This paper is actually saying what's going to happen if you die, who's going to get the company then, and stuff like that. Actually, this is something you can put in an XML file. So this is something which is computer readable, but also human readable. So configuration will be the solution for that. So what we have to build is one underlying middleware on the blockchain which can then be tested by authorities only once, and then build all the virtual companies by configuration on this middleware. And this is what we are going to supply. And the authorities can then believe that and work with that. It works a little bit like that. You have an initiator, this is the founder of a company. They build a TCA, which is just a configuration file. Put it on the blockchain. The blockchain is not running it at that time, but he also takes the configuration file and sends it to a public authority. The public authority reads the configuration file and sees, okay, this is okay according to our jurisdiction, and then issues a legitimation on the blockchain so that the company starts to run on the blockchain. It's as simple as that, actually. So this is how to solve the software and regulation problem. What do we need for that? We need a system which can store KYC and AML approved identities on a public blockchain and handle legitimations. Now this is what Kilk does. And the rest comes actually out of the regulation, which is happening anyway because of STOs right now. Let's come to the next problem, or second problem, there's only two. We call it the curation problem. When you remember the DAO, you had the investors and the curators and the experts that were all in one box. So actually they were expecting that you invest in a company and you also do the work of the company and you know everything about the company. And this is not the case in normal life. In normal life it is a little bit different. If you take the purple box here and say this is a company, then this company has some investors, they invest, because they trust the people who make the company. But those people are not expected to do all the work for themselves. What they do is they hire people, they hire experts, and they incentivize them with salaries. So if you build a company, you will have some employees, and you pay them. And we call those people experts. And they deliver the results. The results, if they do good work, make the value creation for the curators, for the company, which then results in a profit or loss for the investors. But the work of the curator, of those guys in the company, is actually curation. So when I'm a CEO of a company, what I'm doing all day, I'm curating a list of people who work for that company. Good people in the company, not so good people out of the company. This is how the real world works. And this is how we are foreseeing this to put in the token curated attesters. Token curated attesters are basically blockchain-based incentive machines for curators. So you can build a company, purple thing again, and have blockchain technology to select people who want to be experts in your company. You can give them incentives by paying them, and you can receive the results from those guys to create value for your company. So this is the infrastructure we are currently building on top of what's already there. So to conclude that, the TCAs actually have the power to virtualize simple companies. That's only true for companies which produce data as an output. So if here in Athens you want to run a periptero, you cannot do that on a blockchain because it's not going to sell you cigarettes. But if you're running something like a Yelp or so, which produces data, or a job portal, or a software company, all that only produces data, then you can do that on a system like that. TCAs create new business opportunities for investors because they are regulated. Investors can't invest in something which is not regulated, which has not a legal surrounding around it, right? So those things will be appreciated by regulators, and this is why investors can put money into them, and this is also a chance for entrepreneurs because they will be able to receive money from investors in a regulated environment. The virtual persons will be taxed, and thus giving are a great opportunity for governments because when there's successful business, there's tax coming out of that, and this is what governments basically like. The business will move to those jurisdictions which present the regulatory framework first, and we're talking to 3 governments right now, which are very much interested in building that, and the surprise is that even one European government, which is Germany, is talking in that direction with us. So something is happening here. The tokenization of assets, which happens right now, and a lot of projects you see around yourself, is a necessary intermediate step. We need that. Because regulators need to understand how to handle assets on blockchain and how to tax things on blockchain and how to get KYCs and AMLs done for real-world assets. And that's also interesting and necessary for investors to learn how to put their money flows into that new kind of economy. The technology for identification, delegation, and legitimation is already available. This is basically what our company built before. The TCA technology will be ready next year. And making a small hop to artificial intelligence, there will be decision making inside such a company, and this can be done by people, but this can also be done by artificial intelligence. So as a CEO of a company, can I actually be replaced by an artificial intelligence which curates the lists of employees for me? I think, yeah, maybe later. So this is a chance for AI as well. So actually this is putting together blockchain and AI together for the first time. And TCAs will pave the way for decentralized autonomous organization and self-owned assets in the future. So that was basically what I wanted to tell you. I'm here for questions. I think I have 2 more minutes. But please, if you have questions, come along.
5 minutes for questions.
5 minutes, wow. No questions. Oh, yes, well.
I'm not sure if I understood. How do you bridge the off-chain world and the on-chain world? Because as far as I'm aware, there are not so many jurisdictions in the world right now that would recognize ownership on the blockchain.
This is a process which is ongoing. You can't change that from one day to another. But it's now, when you, for example, read the blockchain strategy of Germany, you read that they want a blockchain company now. They want to enable that by the end of 2020. So this is bridging exactly that. Because some jurisdictions, not only the big jurisdictions, smaller jurisdictions are much faster normally. So if you talk to the people in Singapore, if you talk to the people in Jersey, they are very well aware that this is a huge potential for drawing money into the country, for drawing brain into the country, and for building business inside the country. Because this is going to happen. Everybody, I think, knows that we will have virtual companies sooner or later. The one who's moving first will draw the money, will draw the people, the brain. Like you saw that in blockchain very well when we saw the sandboxes opening in Singapore 4 years ago. Everybody was moving to Singapore, all the money was moving to Singapore, and now all the brain, or not all the brain, but a lot of brain from the blockchain industry just lives in Singapore because they had the regulation ready for that. And governments compete, right? And the one who's fastest will get the merits. I'll be around.
Okay.
Okay,
So thank you very much for this insightful presentation.